Hello, everybody, and welcome to KickstART Virtual 2020 and today's special panel of festival crafters. And today we have joining us Stuart MacLeod from Fairbridge Festival, Amber Hasler from Fringe World, Jenny Simpson from Awesome Arts, and Iain Grandage from Perth Festival. And also joining us on the call today is the creative coordinator of KickstART Virtual, Kobe Arthur Morrison. My name's Jamie MacLeod. I'm the General Manager at Propel Youth Arts WA. I just want to quickly acknowledge that KickstART Virtual, at least I believe everyone in this panel is in Wajak Bujar. And I just want to acknowledge the ownership and custodianship of the people who originate from the Wajak Nation and pay respect to elders past and present. Now, I also want to share that people who are tuning in can check out the full schedule of KickstART virtual events, and they'll be happening until the 29th of May, so there's still time to get in on some of that action, and it's all free, of course. And yes, there's just a little bit of housekeeping before we proceed and hear from our fantastic guests. Firstly, there is live captioning available via Zoom, so you just click the CC button, which is at the bottom of your screen if you're tuning in via Zoom. There are questions that can be answered at the end of the presentation. So there's a little Q&A panel, little chat box that you can type a question in, and those questions will be moderated, and we may even, if time permits, allow for live questions at the end of the broadcast. Participants are also welcome to engage with other participants in the chat. And we just remind you all to please be patient, positive and kind to each other in this unprecedented time. If you need any support, just raise your hand via the Zoom app, or you can also send an email through to hello@propel.org.au. And this is also just a reminder that today's session is not only being streamed live to Facebook, but also it's being recorded and will be distributed for future use on Propel's website and social media channels, especially for those who've missed the event. And so, yeah, without further ado, I'll stop sharing the screen and we can see our guests and panelists who are here with us today. Thank you all for your time. And I'm going to pretty much hand over the presentation duties now to Kobe. So yeah, take it away, Kobe.
Kaya Wanju, Nyankro Kobe. Hello, welcome. My name is Kobe. I'm the creative coordinator for the KickstART Virtual. Thank you so much for everyone taking part. Today we have 5 wonderful people here. We're going to go through a Q&A session together with a bunch of questions that have been brought into by people who have applied to take part in this panel as goes. But before we do that, I would like to formally introduce everybody who is taking part in this panel discussion. And so I would like to start off by introducing Miss Jenny Simpson from the Awesome Arts Festival. Hi, Jenny, how are you today?
I'm very well, thanks, Kobe. Thanks for inviting me.
No worries, it's good to see you. Next we have Amber Hasler from Fringe World. Amber, how are you today?
I'm great, thank you. Thanks for having me. Nice to see some faces.
Yes, I totally agree. We next have Stuart MacLeod from the Fairbridge Festival.
Howdy, how you going?
I'm good, how are you?
Very well, very well. A little bit cold. I'm down the bottom of White Gum Valley, so it gets a bit chilly down here.
Yeah, fair enough, fair enough. And last we have Iain Grandage from Perth Festival. Iain, how are you today?
I'm great, thanks, Kobe. Having a beautiful time, slightly warmer up the hill.
Good to hear, good to hear. And of course, for those who don't know, this is Jamie MacLeod, one and only Jamie MacLeod, the General Manager from Propel Youth Arts. Just, I figured I should give you a proper introduction, Jamie, because
I'm the
How are
one and
you?
only. Thank you. I'm the one and only. I appreciate that. That's the biggest compliment I've ever had. Thank you.
We'll find bigger. All right. So let's get into some questions, shall we? I would like to start off by a wonderful question that has come from Carly Lynch. And this question can go pretty much to everyone, but I might suggest this one to Jenny first, if you're up for that. From Carly Lynch, how do you craft a magical atmosphere?
Oh, well, I guess there's two elements to crafting a magical atmosphere, but it always, for me, starts with the artists. That's where the magic happens. And so to create a magical atmosphere, it's about bringing artists to present who have great ideas and magical ideas. Once you have those artists with great work or ideas, then you can make the rest of the magic, be it your site or venue, happen around that. But it always starts with the artist.
Yeah, that's lovely. That's lovely. How about you, Stuart? Do you have any means?
Oh, look, I think that's pretty much nailed it, really. I mean, when you're talking about creative magic, you're talking about creating, and creativity, it comes from inspiration and ideas. And if you've got great ideas and a team that can pull it off, then hopefully you'll achieve that magic. And I think that's one aspect of somewhere like Fairbridge Festival that we've always strived to create somewhere that has a touch of magic to it. And this last cancelled festival, we actually developed a new committee, volunteer committee that was dedicated to, I guess, creating new magical experiences on site. And so that was basically an ideas generation party, which is great and fun. And then you kind of have to rein all these big ideas into the realms of possibility. So it's an interesting thing, taking magical ideas and reimagining them through the budget of a not-for-profit arts organisation.
Good job.
I generally find the most magical ideas are the ones that you can do cheaply.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Very satisfying.
Awesome. Thank you, Stuart. How about yourself, Amber?
Yeah, I completely agree with Jenny and Stuart. And Stuart, that sounds like an amazing collection of people to come together, and I'm sure there was some great ideas that came up from there. Leveraging off that, I mean, all of those things are very much true. The presenters and the artists are the heartbeat of the festival, particularly Fringe World. I guess what we kind of look to work for those artists is, I guess, tone of communications. Like, what is it like to come to Fringe World? What can people expect? And, you know, allowing for those to be very friendly, very personable, looking at ways to entertain people between shows as well. So lots of looking at free programming, activation of space. We did a wonderful program in the Yagan Square meeting place amphitheatre last year called Power Hour, which was a little bit of a taster of performances from across the festival. And I think those things that kind of spark people's imagination and help them navigate their way through such a big program or a diverse program really helps spark a bit of magic and kind of interest in it and a bit of an adventure.
Yeah, wonderful. Thanks, Amber. And how about you, Iain?
Beautiful words from all. I mean, I always think of festival as being something that's different than the day-to-day. So it's the fact that there's so many events going on concurrently, and so many events, and it's the slow and incremental increase of an experience that then makes it not only feel like a festival, but creates that magic. And it's somewhere between that and tungsten light globes. I just can't get enough tungsten light globes. Guarantee, like, it just give me any of those, of that lighting bunting, and I'm incredibly happy. But fundamentally, it's about honouring artists. It's about honouring communication. It's about holding space for people so that they feel welcome. And certainly in the role of what has historically sometimes happened inside the festival, making sure that people feel welcome and that there's not trying to break down the pretentiousness that can be around the arts sometimes. Speak directly. Don't use words which exclude people because they might not know what that word means.
Yeah, no, you're totally right on saying that. That is a very good point that you make, and it segues perfectly into this next question that I have for you all. This one comes from Claudia Mancini. I'm sure I'm hoping I'm saying that correctly. Forgive me if I'm not. In what ways do you work towards making your festivals inclusive, both in terms of artists, presenters, and audience? Iain, you kind of said something on that already. Did you have anything more to say in regards to that question? I
mean, it's interesting in terms of curating things. You're always eager to find balance. And in many instances, I'm aware that as you program things which are welcoming to many people, but you also need to program things which are specific to various demographics as well. And some of those people are not me, and they can never be me. But so to have a team, for us to have the privilege of a team of curators who bring different perspectives helps increase that, and to really ask the questions and work tightly with across the team, be it our development team or our marketing team, to make sure we reach new audiences all the time and make everybody feel welcome.
Fantastic. That's, yeah, very well put. How about yourself, Stuart?
Yeah, look, I think having a team of programmers definitely helps provide that balance. I know it's a big thing for our artistic director, Rod Burvest, to achieve a program that does feel balanced, both in, you know, what is actually being presented, like the genres being presented, the workshops, what knowledge is being passed down to the audience, but also who's doing the presenting as well, their backgrounds and their stories, I guess. So it's all very well and good to do what you want to do and present what you want to present, and but you do have to program to an audience and take into account everything they want to see as well. But also being mindful that there needs to be a balanced representation of all different backgrounds on the stage, but also you know, being aware that not everyone has the same abilities and accessibility, and so providing those opportunities for people on site as well, which is difficult when you're holding something on, you know, dirty, leaf-ridden, gum nut-ridden, gravelly roads, but we get by.
Good job it never rains, Stu.
Ever. I think we've been blessed every year.
Fantastic. Yeah, thank you, Stuart. How about Amber?
Yeah, I really enjoy that Iain and Stuart both talk about accessibility from a curatorial and a programming perspective, and I think that is incredibly important about taste and, you know, what these festivals and what our festivals kind of represent for a platform for stories. And one of the things that I love about Fringe World is that it is an open access festival, which means that anyone can participate, you know, through us creating a platform that's affordable and accessible for artists to register and present their work. And one of the things that I've always found quite interesting is the flow of stories or politics or, you know, things that our artists from across WA and Australia are making work about, and what that kind of story and tone and thread is kind of trying to say to the people. And I've always found that is comes at its own current, you know, and it comes in ebbs and flows of what our artists want to present to audiences, and I find that that's very interesting. Fringe World really does try to maintain an accessible focus for artists. You know, this is a platform where our emerging artists trying something for the very first time can sit alongside a fringe superstar of, you know, the Tim Mitchells and the Meow Meows of across the world. You know, I think that plays a really important role in a local landscape like Perth and other cities across Australia in being another one of those stepping blocks for artists to be able to try something new and put their foot on the fringe circuit and connect to other artists. And I think that's one of the best ways that our festival can maintain accessibility.
Yeah, I think you're totally right. And how about yourself, Jenny?
It's such a big area, really. Where do you start? So curatorially, one of the things that I try and achieve is the ability for people in our audience to be able to see themselves on stages. And particularly for children and for families, there's a lot of aspiration there. So, so to give one example, disability is an area we've looked at very carefully over the last few years. And so, you know, we've had, I'm really pleased to say, we've had artists with a whole array of disabilities or neurodiverse performers performing across or having exhibitions across all our art forms. So be it a visual arts exhibition or literature or theatre or dance. So I do try and bring that to the program. Also just in terms of diversity, cultural diversity. And then accessibility is another big one. I guess financial accessibility is a big issue for our audience, families. I'm sure there are families in certain suburbs of Perth that could easily afford to pay a lot of money for a ticket, but we're really trying to bring in audiences more broadly. So where the cost of a show that we might bring in from overseas, the ticket might realistically cost about $85, we'll bring that ticket down through subsidy down to about $20. So we're really trying to make it financially accessible. And then we have other programs where there are $5 tickets available to some groups as well. So trying to make it financially accessible. And the other thing we do is we try and zone in over a period of time on a particular area of barrier to accessing the festival. So a couple of years ago, we really focused in on autism, and we learned a lot. And from talking with focus groups and lots of mums and lots of families, we developed a specific navigational tool for people who have ASD to join the festival. Then a couple of years ago, we worked with the deaf community, and we got a bunch of people from the deaf community to come to the festival and give us very robust feedback. Not only about whether there's interpreters, that's a really boring, you know, if making a festival accessible for deaf people was simply bunging on an interpreter, it'd just be so easy. It's not. It's about what kind of programming works. Non-verbal programming and physical theatre, does that work, or does it need to be framed in a particular way? And so, so we try and actually have real conversations with real people, and we bring them in, and we ask them to really brutally, if needs be, and robustly tell us what their experience of our event is, and then we work with them to make it better.
Yeah, I think you do fantastically in that area. I especially enjoyed last year's Awesome Arts Festival, especially in the sense that the theme of the festival was extremely inspiring, and being able to take part in the festival was really something that got me right in the feelings. For those who don't know, I believe that theme was celebrating our little superheroes, or something along the lines of that. And
we told the story of 33 children who have varying disabilities, but celebrated them as superheroes, and they posed the question to the rest of the community, I know what my superpower is, so what's yours? And it was a great way of framing that question.
Yeah, super inspiring kids they are. Yes. Yeah, that's just wonderful, beautiful. Let's move on to our next question then. This one comes from John McAndrew. And this question is, how do you measure what is a successful event? And so this one's not necessarily like pointed towards anybody. If anybody feels like they want to answer that one first, please by all means. Otherwise I will elect somebody.
I used to run a big music festival that had lots of, it was like Fairbridge, but it was in Canberra's big national event. And it's going to sound hard-nosed and horrible, but I'd know it was a success if nobody died.
Oh, gosh.
We had this is an event that used to run 24 hours a day in sub-zero temperatures where 4,000 people were camping, and we'd have, it was a good festival if we had less than 10 ambulances through. So like we get to the end of it and go, oh, nobody died.
I was going to say, was it an axe throwing festival or something?
No, it was just a music festival, but I'm sure other people have much more delightful parameters.
Canberra youth, yeah.
High fives around the boardroom. Yes, no one died.
No one died.
Beautiful. How about, yes, does anybody else have other parameters to go by?
I think there's definitely a feeling at the event. And look, obviously the bottom dollar always helps. Like if you can come in on budget or over, then that's one measure of success. But I think what keeps people coming back is the feeling you get when you're at the event. And if you can create that magic that we were talking about before, then I think you can definitely count it as a success. Because some years you might not financially be successful, but you might have such a great time on site that next year will be the big one. Do you know what I mean?
One of our key values for the Fringe is that our success is defined by our artists' success. Mm-hmm. And for artists and presenters, that success can be a lot of different things. Of course, finances are a big part of it, but also opportunity to present to a thriving audience here in their own backyard, to their own people and community, to develop the work, to connect to other artists, to be part of a bigger dialogue and a bigger circuit and narrative, I think is also really important. And I think it's also important to say that, over the last 10 years that Fringe World has existed, I think our community and our funders and our stakeholders have looked at these festivals that are sitting here in this panel and the good work they've done in changing social elements and cultural elements within city areas and new developments, and for young people who have now, grown up from over the last 10 years. And I think we've, as an industry, have gotten a lot better of talking about how we are valued in cultural, societal, financial, economic kind of markers within our society, and the role that our organisations play within that. And I think that's all very, very valuable stuff for us to keep working with as we move into this next version.
I have to say, Amber, like with Fringe in particular, you guys do a fantastic job with those impact reports, and there's information there that's so valuable, not just in advocating for Fringe's existence and growth, but also there's information that I've used to justify or support applications with Propel, and I'm sure others on this chat have as well.
I basically just harangued my graphic designer at RTR just to make it look like Fringes.
Power of an infographic, honestly.
I want more infographics.
Just painting the picture of how important these things are. And I do think, 15 years ago, there wasn't this this language for us to be able to talk about the value of the arts in such an easy way to audiences and stakeholders. And, it is I mean, thank you. That report is such a labour of love and comes from the voices of our attendees, and that when they tell us what their experience was, and our artists, and for us to be able to capture that in such a positive way, but also for it to inform our improvements each year and the direction we want to take the festival and our other projects in is a really powerful tool to have.
I guess just to follow up on that, and I know I'm kind of hijacking things a little bit here, but I just got a message through to the Propel page from Kelly Jennings, who was wondering if there are any specific tools or evaluation methods that are used by anyone within this group. Maybe Ian?
So I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Amber, but Perth Festival utilises culture counts. Who do a really shit hot infographic, got to say. But they are mentioning the great danger in all of this is that because there's such a quantifiable figure with finances, you look at those, be it audience numbers or be it like there's that many people came, they spent that much money. Like you can generally get, the danger is you get caught into that and that growth paradigm of all of those things where bigger is necessarily better, and how you continue to reframe that. So that you make sure that you are that you're trying to define those intangible things, which we see so many arts and arts companies and festivals amongst that, as we try and prosecute a case about support for the arts in the light of COVID. And the fact that it's strange that some of those arguments we like to think we've done well, but perhaps like there's undoubtedly a question that we need to do better in terms of articulating what it is that we do. Unless you were there at the festival, you can't go, it was magnificent, like that. The anecdote is as powerful as the financial thing, but if you can't get the powers that be to join in with your festival and let them enjoy it, then they don't have that first person experience and get to prosecute the case inside Treasury or inside Cabinet. And it's those arguments about how and where, or inside philanthropic organisations, or to our generous sponsors and donors. And it's those things where you go, it's about how we utilise the words to make the case for who we are and what we do. But to answer in short, Culture Counts are an organisation who do that professionally, and they utilise things. They call these things called dimensions, and they're about how unique and authentic and excellent, whether you felt like you belonged more when you saw it, and whether what the impact was, and whether it showed off artists to their best abilities. They have 20 odd dimensions by which they quantify and ask audiences whether they enjoyed an event.
Yeah, I think that science of social impact has come a long way in the last 10 years, and it's such an important thing in the art sphere to be able to measure the worth of an organisation beyond the economic and beyond the obvious. And I think that funding bodies, because it's becoming such a much more respected area of research and displaying your worth, I think that funding bodies are definitely looking at the fuzzy data now with a lot more vigor, and awarding funds to arts organisations that might not have the hugest financial impact, but are bettering people's lives in many other different ways.
I was just going to say, I also think there's that idea of externally evaluating and talking about our value and measuring success. And all of us need to be constantly looking at how we message and delivering that social impact and all the good things. But I also think the festival team probably views the success of the festival like more about the stories that came out of the festival. So we actually survey all of our volunteers, we survey all of our artists, and knowing that we can't actually put on a festival, a really good festival, without them. So one of the things that really helps us determine, one of the things, if we've been successful, we've got a cohort of volunteers that are having a really fulfilling experience. They're getting a lot out of it. It's supporting them to learn about the arts. And, you know, they might be going to work in a different, in the arts somewhere else. They're looking for experience. And also to hear from artists about their experience. That's particularly the case because we're quite a small festival, and I'll often approach some artist who's some fancy pants artist that everybody wants, and they'll say, why should I talk to you? I should be talking to Iain. And I probably, if I don't like what they do, I'll send them to you, Iain. But no, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Often it's the case that I've said, oh, well, I know you're friends with this artist. They performed here a few years ago. Why don't you ring them up? And that artist will say, oh, awesome, really looked after me. I felt like I was a part of a family. The engagement with the audience was just fantastic. I had a really good venue. So that to me is a measure of success in terms of, it's harking back to what Amber was saying about what that artist experience is. That is really important. My motto, I send a letter to all the artists before they, as they arrive at the festival. And my motto, and I haven't found a better motto, is happy artist, happy audience. You know, if your artist is in a great place and they're out there, you know, they're well supported and they can get out there and do what they do, the audience is going to have a great experience. So I hope to create a good day at the office for all of our artists.
And just circling back to that question in general, like in terms of the tools that we use to evaluate the sort of non-economic or even economic benefits of our events, you obviously use the tools that you have, like surveys are a huge data gathering tool, but at the end it's what you do with those results and that data that ultimately determines how well you're measuring and how effective your measuring is. And I guess that's where the magic happens, is where you can identify these reoccurring themes and you know, make changes to either improve or strengthen those areas.
All right, cool. For the sake of time, let's move on to our next question. It kind of segues from this last stuff. Anyway, this one comes from Rebecca Riggs-Bennett. How do you choose productions / works / talks, etc.? Amber, I choose you.
Ah, great. Well, mine's quite an easy question because as an open access festival, the amount of curation that comes from Fringe World Festival is very, very minimal, in fact. What we focus on is supporting independent venues and producers to present artists' work at their space. And then we also have a Fringe World managed venue program as part of that as well. So when people apply to work in a Fringe World managed venue, and this may be a pop-up Spiegel tent or a Dutch theatre in the Woodside Pleasure Garden or Yagan Square or something, the thing we're looking to offer that artist is something that that they're going to be able to thrive in. You know, we don't want to see anyone set up for failure. It's all about success. So if you're an emerging artist and you know, it's your first time here, perhaps a 600 CDs and for a month isn't your best option. It's something a little more intimate and a little more supportive. But our real focus is about identifying venues and presenters and producers that can help present the work for the artists on the platform, which is very different to how some of these other festivals work in terms of formal curation. I guess the other element of stimulation perhaps is more about how the conversation between our festival and other festivals and on the Fringe World circuit, but also in the broader kind of network of touring opportunities and support opportunities for artists of how do we make strategic connections to some of those key players that ultimately will present an opportunity or a value in the long run for the likes of our artists to be able to go further abroad or to create something new or deepen their kind of relationship with their work is probably where that more pinpointed approach to relationships and programs comes from.
Thanks, Amber. How about yourself, Stuart?
Sorry, what was the question?
The question was how do you choose your productions / works, talks, etc.?
Yeah, look, that's a question for our artistic director first and foremost. But look, we have a submission period. It's generally from about July, August through to the end of September. And then within that pool of submissions, we can sort of identify acts that will work together and provide that sort of balanced program. But I do know that Rod is also a very proactive artistic director, and he's constantly on the lookout for interesting, unique performers overseas and locally. And he's always, you know, brimming with enthusiasm about some new, you know, Arabian gypsy fiddler, or you know, he's just a fountain of knowledge when it comes to unique and obscure music, and he loves to showcase it. So he's got a team of programmers that work on different aspects of our festival. We have sort of a children's programmed festival and a youth programmed side of our festival. And then we have also a selection of workshops as well. So all of that comes under his banner, and it's driven by his desire and his passion to showcase something that is unique and magical. Yeah. And also that fits within the budget.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, I was very lucky to be able to take part in an event for the Fairbridge Festival, and it was pretty awesome to be able to work with Rod. He was very accommodating for me.
Yeah.
Frantically asking him questions at 2 a.m. in the morning, like, "Hey Rod, I need some help with something."
But also what Amber mentioned about the networks you create with other festivals, that enables you to do some cost sharing with artists. If you're bringing someone in from overseas, they can, you know, they can do a leg here and maybe down at the Albany Arts Festival and across to the National Folk Festival, and all of a sudden they've got 3 paychecks for the price of 1 airfare, and it makes it a little more easier for them.
Yeah, fantastic. That's really cool. Iain, we haven't heard from you.
Hi. Well, I mean, I grew up as an artist. I'm a musician, and then became an artistic director. So I think on the first count, it's very important that we commission work. It's one of the things that we do get to do, bring new work into the world that speaks to the here and now and to this place and to this time. So that's one specific way where you can have a work of art that speaks very presently to an audience that you hope are there. I don't subscribe to the auteur festival director. I don't think my sense of taste is any better than the next person's. So it's about having an ear out to many people about how best and what they want to see. And then it's in the synthesizing of those disparate elements, not unlike it at Fairbridge or the Fringe, and it's in the synthesis of it that makes the statement rather than each of these individual parts. We as festival directors are riding on the coattails of artists every day. There is nothing that a festival director does, full stop. There is a little bit of this weaving together, and then it's about creating energy, and then it's about celebrating. And so from that point of view, I don't subscribe at all to the auteur. I have impeccable taste, and let me show you. That undoubtedly exists, but and more power to those people who either profess to possessing that judgment or in fact do. But from my point of view, our hope is inside the Perth Festival is that you create an argument through a series of works that convince people of, brings them joy and brings them philosophical contemplation and brings them fitness through dancing their pants off.
Beautiful.
Beautiful. Yeah. Thanks, Iain. How about you, Jenny?
Yeah, look, I never actually wanted to get into programming. I just used to run festivals and used to like nice, clean processes and where nobody died. When I fell backwards into programming, I won't go into that story, but I basically got told by the board I had to program because we didn't have enough money. So as a rank amateur, I decided, I put to the board, I'd only program the festival if I could bring in an accomplished and respected programmer to help me. So I hired in an artistic director who put me through boot camp, and any ego I had before thinking I was going to be a programmer got kicked out of me pretty quickly. yeah, every time I wanted to program something, he said to me, "Is this your ego? Are you trying to impress your colleagues in the arts, or is this about your audience?" I'm like, so I still ask myself that question, believe it or not, when I think that I want to test an idea. And then since then, it's been a condition that the condition that I am programming the event is that I am able to bring in a peer reviewer to give me feedback on my programming and to ask me difficult questions and to talk about it, because I think if I live to be 100, I'll never stop learning when it comes to programming. One of those peer reviewers was a dude called Noel Jordan, and I actually should be at his festival at the moment in Scotland, but unfortunately it's gone the way of all things COVID. Noel was the most brutal peer reviewer I've ever had. Oh gosh, I must find a copy of it one day, but he basically said, "Who do you think you are sitting in Perth thinking that you know what's best for everybody? Get out there and see some work." So my methodology, which I've learned from Noel, is just to see as much as I can, see it all. I talk to as many artists as I can. I try and understand what their ideas and their programs are. I try and, I've got a notebook where I basically I've sort of scoped up what that project might look like. We all have to work to various parameters. You know, there's financial, what venues you have access to, the age group you're programming for. There's all sorts of really boring things that constrict us as programmers. So sometimes it's a matter of fitting some of that together with, those ideas. So I've got about, I've got that many people's ideas in the back of my brain and in my notebook, and I'm collecting them. So when an opportunity comes up, and I'm talking to somebody about a potential project, and I know that this other artist is thinking along those lines and they'd be great to work together. For me, it's about putting it all together, talking to artists, or it might even be because I'm the CEO of the company, so I also control the purse strings. So I'm able to I might be talking to a potential sponsor who'll say, what we really, really want to support is something to do with blah, 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 blah. And I have the perfect project scoped out of my brain, onto the table, and I can get that money more easily than if it's, than some other festivals in terms of process. So for me, it's understanding and talking to as many artists as I can, seeing as much work as I can, because that's how I learn. And I have a fantastic network of international children's festival directors. So when I'm not sleeping, which is often between about midnight and 3 a.m, I'm Googling their programs and I'm sending them emails saying, what's this show? Who's this artist? I haven't heard of them. Tell me more about them. And so I'm constantly having conversations with my peers and trying to learn. Because when you do live in a place like Perth, you're a long way from anywhere, and it's hard when you're in the cut and thrust of running things to actually be getting on a plane and seeing things often. So it's about having good networks and reliable people. I also find the people I bring to the festival as peer reviewers, once they've been to the festival and they understand our context, they give me much better advice about the sorts of artists that might really, work well with us.
Wow, that's extremely thorough, and no, that's fantastic advice to Steve. I really like the notion of having to take part in the events that take place, especially when it's at your own festival or anything that's prior. And yeah, that's why I enjoy taking part in all your festivals when we get the chance. So we have a couple of questions that all kind of revolve around the same concept, and so we have one from our one of our project managers, project coordinator, Cecile, who asks, "What's your professional life like in your 20s?" Sorry. So, Stuart, how about you?
So currently I'm in my 20s and my professional life is great. So is the question, what was your professional life like in your 20s?
Yeah, sorry, I got
Okay.
distracted by
Okay, no worries. I thought it was a very philosophical question for a second. No, look, my professional life in my 20s was my life. I started a band in my 20s, and that pretty much took over. Quit engineering, which was great for my parents, and yeah, just jumped on a plane with everything we had and slept on people's floors, and that was it. So my professional life was my life, and I think for a lot of people in the arts organisation, in the arts world, that if you were an artist, that is your life, you know. But at the same time, a lot of artists, they give it their all, but they still have to have a job on the side. I think that's pretty much the story for most people, and I think I was one of the lucky few that managed to scrape through enough to make a living out of it.
Well done. So how about yourself, Amber?
Well, one of the things, I guess, about my career that I find fascinating is that I've actually only ever really had 2 jobs. And the first one I had was one that I got when I was 16 years old, and it was at the Blue Room Theatre, and was working alongside some incredible arts managers, the likes of Jancis O'Hanlon, and an impressive board and team. And I feel very, very privileged to have grown up in this local Perth arts industry. I've seen, and a lot of what I've learned about what I enjoy about theatre and performance and events has come from the things that I have seen here first and foremost, from our local artists. And, you know, been very privileged to see some early works and then artists develop into, you know, far stronger artists that they are today. And then my second job has obviously been with Art Rage, where I've been for 14 years, I think, and Fringe World, in its 10 years of existence, is you know, an absolute true blessing and labour of love for me. I think that this festival plays a really important role alongside many other organisations for supporting West Australian artists first and foremost, and it's been a pleasure to be part of shaping that in response to not only our artists but also our city. You know, from what I've, you know, how much Perth has changed in those 14 years has been incredible. So my 20s were very Perth centric. You know, I didn't really kind of travel to other festivals and until I wasn't 20 anymore. Yeah, I feel like that has been a very unique learning curve for me, and kind of, you know, gives me a great sense of pride. But, you know, I've also in my 20s, I was very, you know, able to try many new things. There was a small period there where I was working as an independent producer. You know, I tried my hand at stage management and costume design, and, you know, all kinds of little bits and pieces. And I think that has that opportunity to kind of test in a bit of a safe space was really rewarding. But you know, when you find the love, you got to kind of knuckle down and ride it out. So it was the 20s.
I think that's the best part about your 20s is as you get older, you enjoy the finer things in life, like a bed, or, you know, but back in your 20s, you can just deal with anything as long as you're having fun. And that's, I guess, the exciting part about being an artist in your 20s is it's all exciting, no matter how shit your living conditions are. And
also new, you know, you're learning so much. You know, I recall some of the first productions I ever saw at the Blue Room, you know, and they're some of Perth's, you know, most treasured actors that, you know, I was kind of waltzing into a show and seeing that. And you really don't, I guess you're not afraid of the risk versus reward. And, you know, I think it's all for the good spirit and for the opportunity to learn and have fun and connect and grow up a little bit. You know, I think it's all just symbolic of you growing in real time, you know, making mistakes, having wins, all those kinds of things.
Yeah, you're totally right.
I love it how you can grow as an artist without growing up, though.
Yeah.
That's
They're young.
You can go or you don't have to go. No, fantastic. How about you, Jenny?
Well, I grew up in Wagga Wagga, and my parents actually used to run a festival. So at a very young age, I was ripping tickets on the door, and I managed to convince the local paper that I was a journalist and I was writing articles about the festival when I was 12. And should do. Then I decided that, and we used to have great jam sessions on our farm with some of Australia's best musicians who were touring in to just come and play with us. It was really great. Then I thought, yeah, I need to rebel. So I became a commodity trader in my 20s. Lived in Melbourne, had a company car that was red fast. I always wore shoulder pads. So I was this commodity trader. I was the youngest and the only female in the industry in Melbourne at that time, but couldn't quite get rid of the music because I had my own band that was touring and playing festivals like Port Fairy and the National and Woodford. And I was also freelancing in a few different bands who, if somebody was sick, I'd get called in. Unfortunately, one of them called me in as a drummer once, and that didn't end well because I'm not a drummer. But so, yeah, the music was always there. And in fact, that's how I got to play Fairbridge. I was on a business trip to Perth, and I audaciously rang up the then festival director, Max Klubel, and said, hey, I'm a singer. Your festival's on. Have you got a bed? I'll come and play. And he said, I don't know who you are. I said, I'll ring up some of these other festivals. And he rang me back and said, yeah, all right, you can come and play. So I think it was the second or the third Fairbridge. I rocked up with a guitar, very resilient. I slept in one of those, the beds were very dodgy at Fairbridge back then.
They were.
Now they weren't. They're good now. They're great now. And I partied my bum off for the weekend at Fairbridge. I had a great time. I wrote a review of the festival, a lot of which was just marvelling at the size of the gum nuts in Perth because the gum nuts in the east. In the end, I came to Perth and ended up as a district sales manager at Schweppes. Still playing music all the while. I know.
It's a pretty straight trajectory then, really, to where you are now.
It's pretty bonkers. And then I had this sort of moment where I thought, I was really good at that. I was a very good district sales manager. I was, winning bonuses and I was the best. And I thought, if you're going to be really good at something, maybe selling sugar to children isn't something to be good at. So I had this epiphany and went, right, that's it. I'm not doing that anymore. And I ended up in the arts. I became the touring manager at Country Arts WA and halved my income, but never had so much fun in my life. It was just so good to be involved in the West Australian art scene. And yeah, have an enduring affection for Fairbridge and music festivals in particular, because that's my background as a performer. But yeah, my professional life was a mix of crazy work and corporate work and performing and jam sessions and festivals.
Amazing. What an interesting translation of two very different industries, but yet it's the same skills of, kind of wanting financial success and good business and all of those things, and you can apply it from trading to arts.
Yeah, it's all about, it's always relationships, I think. It doesn't matter what you do. You need to be good at relationships and spreadsheets as well, probably, in both arts. Yeah, in the arts and business.
Amazing. And how about you, Ian? Yeah.
I was a muso back then. I can barely remember. No, the first half of my 20s, I was still being a classical musician. I was playing inside the WA Symphony Orchestra. By 23, 24, I knew that that's pretty much what I didn't want to do, even though the logical thing was to get a job inside the orchestra and do that. At 25, I auditioned for Black Swan. I'm a terrible actor. I can say that from the safety of 25 years distance, but did say to the then artistic director, Andrew Ross, that I would love to write music for theatre shows. And so I then wrote music for theatre shows, which was, given that I played 3 or 4 weddings a weekend from the age of 18 to the age of 25. Was working in theatre was a massive pay cut, but at least I didn't have to play Pachelbel's Canon again. But then, as Stu describes, just sleeping on the floors of small to medium theatre company production managers in Sydney and Melbourne, just kind of but adoring it and making theatre work, and then through that got introduced to the late great Jimmy Chai from Broome, Trevor Jamison getting to work out in the desert, and through all of those experiences, and then through collaborations from Black Swan, which is a big part when you live in a city this isolated, just got to do co-pros with companies over east. But during that, before there was a Fringe, the festival club of the Perth Festival was an absolute cracker in the undercroft of Winthrop Hall. It was just so there's seared on memories of Somerville and the festival club that I regaled the board with to try and get this job, and I think their memories, that nostalgia helped tip the needle in my favour. Getting this job, but like I'm always aware of just being a musician or what it feels like to be an artist, and to not abuse any of that, any of the privilege of getting to make beautiful music.
Amazing.
Oh, thank you. Thanks, Ian. That's fantastic. That's really lovely. I think that going along those lines, I'll ask a question that has been asked by Alexandria Thompson. How did everyone get involved in the festival planning career, which is pretty, on the most part, I'm pretty sure, yeah. Jenny, you've kind of already answered that question.
Yeah, at an early age, I was involved in festivals, and it actually cured me of festivals at that point in time, I think. And it wasn't until I kind of got headhunted to go and work at the National Folk Festival over in Canberra to run that for a couple of years that festivals got back into my blood, and yeah, been there ever since doing festivals. Oh, that sound is my doorbell. Hang on.
All right, we'll come back to you, Jenny. How about you, Stuart MacLeod?
Yeah, look, I obviously lived in the back sort of rooms of festivals for many years as a touring musician, and then I think it was around 2014 the band sort of decided to take a bit of a hiatus, if you will. So we all sort of embarked on a bit of adventures of our own. I started a acoustic treatment business, building recording studios, and ruined my body in the process. So looked for work elsewhere, which I found at RTR-FM, and we put on probably 12 to 14 events at RTR-FM of various scale. And that set me up well to take the helm of general manager here at Fairbridge Festival. And so I've only been doing it for a little over 18 months now. So yeah, been through one festival, and April was going to be 2 festivals. But I think what you're saying is right, Jenny. You can definitely grow weary of festivals if they're not feeding you in the right way. But something that's as fresh and new to me as Fairbridge, but also as magical as Fairbridge, it's very nurturing, and it's a great team of people, heaps of passion behind the scenes, and dedication to creating that sense of wonder for all the families and kids, and that's just a real blessing to be a part of that. Yeah.
Beautiful.
I'm just going to let my dog in. I'm not sure if you can hear her whining at the door.
And my dog just started barking, sorry.
I'm keeping the kids at bay, but only for a couple of minutes.
Come on.
Sorry.
Oh, kids.
Jenny, did you want to finish out what you're saying as well?
What was I saying? Yes, so festivals do get into your blood, but like, yeah, you can also, they're pretty tough on people. And I think if I ever write a book about anything, it'll be the process of living with a festival. There are tremendous highs, and it's just so wonderful to be able to bring people together and experience that. That's a wonderful thing to do and to experience. But, you know, I'm sure all of us are really familiar with the feeling of the festival getting packed down and, you know, saying goodbye to something you've just really loved bringing together. And we actually, it's really funny, when our site gets packed down, I just head to my office and find something to do. I bury myself in a spreadsheet because I just cannot bear to see production ripping it all apart. And I find that the team at Awesome, who aren't working in production, are often just wandering the corridors looking at their shoes and trying to find things to do. So we all try and find something to do as soon as the festival starts to pack down, because it's a bit heartbreaking. So it is, you know, festivals can be really hard on you in that way, and then it takes a while to get over. I always say that as a team, it's like we're all married to each other. None of us see our respective loved ones or partners very much in that busy time when time speeds up. And then it takes about a week. I give everyone a week off. Let's all have a week off after festival, but everyone still turns up at work because we're so dependent on just seeing each other, and we kind of need to debrief a bit, and wasn't this bit really great, and that worked and we didn't think it would. And finally you sort of pull yourself away and go back out to your families. So it's a really, to me, it's a really interesting process running a festival. And now that I know what the beast is, I love it and I know what to expect, and I don't get dumped so badly by it now. But it can be really challenging running a festival, because it's, you know, you don't get dress rehearsals for a festival. It just all has to go up.
Yeah, thank you for that, Jenny. Amber, how about you? How'd you get to? Yep.
Yeah, before Fringe World, I mean, our organisation was doing a festival called the Fairbridge Festival, which is very different to Fringe, and we were producing the Northbridge Festival for the city of Perth. So my experience in festivals has been quite varied. It's always been centred around programming or artist engagement and presenting of events. But it has varied across the years, and I think I've really enjoyed learning, you know, a varying range of skills, from programming a live music venue to being having such pride in being the Fringe World director, where it's about relationships and opportunity and kind of watching people grow. And on a personal level, you know, I've really enjoyed experiencing new types of festivals as well, and it's only really been in the last kind of six to 8 years that I've been privileged enough to kind of visit other countries and festivals and the way that they program things and other fringes. And you know, I find it really exciting when I go to festivals that have such a big focus on site-specific work, you know, and I think all of those opportunities have taught me something about what Fringe World is, what it can be, but also really, you know, fanned the flame of my love of art and festival culture. On the flip side of that, though, you know, it does take a whole year to, if not longer, to prepare one festival, which lasts for usually less than a month. And when you're lucky enough to be part of that cycle on a more regular basis, it's very hard kind of working with such a transitory team. You know, you're constantly bringing a team up to speed and then they're off again. And, you know, as an organisation, you strive for longevity in people's contracts and, you know, to be able to keep those really good people who do such a great job. But it does take a toll. Nothing that, you know, I'd certainly trade in. I find it to be quite a good challenge, and, you know, that cycle I think brings the best out in me. But yeah, I would love to in the future kind of expand what I see a festival being, or festival has been. And I think one of the good things about COVID-19 will be how people access arts and culture and theatre in the future, and what that means for festivals. And I think, you know, just from scratching the surface, I think there's a great opportunity for how people consume and engage and visit and those kinds of things. And I think that will be kind of the next insight and learning for me on a professional level anyway.
I think you're right about this COVID thing presenting an opportunity for artists, because I think artists intrinsically are problem solvers. Do you know what I mean? They have, a lot of the time you'll have an idea or inspiration and you need to get that out, and that's the problem you need to solve. And I think putting challenges or constrictions in place for a lot of artists brings new inspiration to them. So it'll be interesting to see what sort of new art gets created from within bedrooms and webcams around the world.
And how they want to use their audience as well, you know. I think the theatre will always have a place, and we as an industry need to figure out how we're going to get audiences in front of those stages, you know, and for it to be viable and safe and all of those things. But from an artist's perspective, I'd imagine it would be really interesting to start thinking about ways that you present the audience to your work, you know, be it them moving past you in a promenade sense or, you know, digital. I think there's, you know, some great thinking by people more creative than I in response to that. But yeah, I think
we can pretty much say people are going to be over screens.
Yeah.
But even just the concept of having a really large space and the audience being seated, you know, in their own little 4-meter bubble, that's kind of interesting from a creative perspective, you know.
Yeah, I was talking to somebody who runs a big festival in New Zealand yesterday, and he's actually was pitching to their government that they have this event it's called the World of Wearable Arts. So they have, I don't know, they make more money on that festival in 5 minutes than what we make in about 20 years. But he's talking about the seating is something like 2,000 people, and he's talking about having banks of 500 that they watch it, then it's like a processional show, and then they go, and then the next lot, and I have no idea. I was like, it was breaking my brain listening to him talk about it, but he was so excited, and he said that the government thought it was a wonderful thing. I was like, oh man, I'm just going to have to see what happens, how that all pans out. They've just cancelled it for this year, but they're still looking at those models into the future. And, in fact, we just launched a show on the 14th of May. We launched a new show, which is a beautiful show by the Threshold Theatre in Melbourne, in partnership with some other presenters around Australia. And these artists had been working on, because there's a lot going on in audio play and storytelling and interactive theatre for children, and they'd been working on this idea for some time, and just lucky for them that when everyone went into lockdown, they had the perfect vehicle for a new show. So we actually got together and funded them to go through some creative developments during isolation to make a new work, which I have to say kept me alive, because the thing that's really hurt me the most in terms of my mental health is not really having those creative conversations with artists. It's, oh, I'd really like to be doing this, but I've got this idea, but, and the but's been killing me, to be honest. So to have some artists say, we've got something and it's really beautiful and it'll work. Would you like to fund a creative development? We didn't have to put much money in, and bang, we had a new show that works. So I'm expecting to see a lot more of that cleverness come into play.
I've certainly seen a series of workshop presentations during isolation times with like the most extraordinary groups of actors who all through jiggery pokery and Zoom, kind of when they appear on stage and they appear, and you get such beautiful intimacy. It's like freaking Euro high art with your special screen, but hundreds of thousands of dollars cheaper, and just glorious in the way that you the way that they reach and grab a bottle from off screen, and like it's there's been beautifully creative things inside there. And I mean, the Hunters themselves built something for Google that premiered on the weekend, and it looks like, as Stu alludes to, artists, when you give yourself a smaller sheet of white paper to dream on, the beautiful things that come out, otherwise, if you've got the world to dream inside, it can sometimes be a bit difficult.
Yeah, it's like when you've only got like a really shitty Casio keyboard in your room and you have to create a masterpiece, and all of a sudden you managed to do it because you've never used a shitty Casio keyboard before.
I love them.
Very cool. Yeah, I was totally grateful for like all the canvases that we have at our fingertips. It's not just the sake of having the like traditional square canvas that you'll paint on, but it's also the canvas of having like something to record, like your phone you record on, and you can just like noodle on a guitar, and that's kind of your canvas. Or like the canvas of Minecraft. It's just, there's so many different little things that you may not consider to be a canvas in the first place, but like these are things that allow people to be as creative as they want to be, and like this might be the thing that motivates them to be like, you know, operating at their full creative capabilities, and it may not be quite what you expect. But I digress. I'm very
Can I see your Minecraft canvas, Kobe?
I personally don't have a Minecraft canvas. I have a more of an Animal Crossing canvas that I've been utilizing. But yes, I digress.
Can I just say, there's a lot of fantastic musicians out there who usually play in big bands with lots around them, and they're presenting really pared back. Like I've been addicted to Katie Noonan. She's just been playing her latest album on the piano. I think for emerging artists who are, you know, I was once a teenager in a bedroom playing a guitar, and I was just inspired by seeing the craft of other people playing live. So when you see someone, you know, people who are very good songwriters, very good musicians, just playing acoustically, I think it's really inspiring for people who are emerging and learning to see, oh, that's what Paul Kelly sounds like when it's just him and a guitar. Because often when you're learning music, it doesn't feel very accessible when there's a whole band there creating that whole sound. When it's just one person and one instrument, or just somebody singing, you think, oh, that's what that sounds like when I have a go. And I think that's lovely. I think there's a lot more people being encouraged to play music at the moment because of those wonderful artists just doing very simple and pared-back arrangements on screens.
Some beautiful stuff out there, definitely. And it's really good to be able to just see that absolute genuine you know, soul that comes from that person, you know, in their very, like, you know, stripped back way. Yes. So yeah, I'm being very of time, so I might move on to some more questions. I guess one of the main things that I do want to reiterate is like the sheer importance of having a panel such as this, especially for the sake of me, as well as people like me. For those who don't know, Propel Youth Arts selects a creative coordinator each year, and they have selected me for the 2020 year. And it has been such an enriching experience. And I know for a fact that there are people who are currently watching or going to watch this panel who are kind of aspiring you know, festival crafters. And so the reason why I wanted to host this was not only, you know, to enrich a person like myself, but also to help out all those future festival crafters and I really do hope that this is going to be something that helps them out later on down the track. And so with that being said, we do have a question from Renee King. Any advice for an inaugural festival planner? Put that out there. How about you, Iain?
I mean, I'm blessed. I've got to say, I'm blessed in that I've got the most glorious team. As Jenny has alluded to, there is no shortage of ideas, and ideas are really cheap in and of themselves. But to have a team who can manifest those ideas is glorious. So surround yourself by as many people who you admire and whose skills complement your own. It's fucking mental. It's mental that that something like Highway to Hell gets up, for instance, like a large scale idea and I had no strategy with that other than the fact that I told everybody I could about it, until I was telling the Premier about it, and then it happened. So it's kind of like, it's one of those things where, if knowing what I now know, I'm not sure I'd have the hubris to think that I could get away with that. However, like, now it's there and it's in the ether and it happened and it was beautiful. But again, to talk of Jenny, like, my fears were that morning, I've never been more filled with worry, because I thought that someone would die on that highway. And so you go, those realities are the responsibility that comes with having cooked that thing. So to not let those worries and the risk management and all of those things stifle the joy of what might be possible. So to stay hopeful in the face of what might seem unreasonable, but don't expect that it's going to happen. Try and make it fly for as long as it's possible to make it fly, and then accept it when so many people are saying we can't do this. But that's my strategy as a first-time person, just to maintain the courage to continue to push an envelope, but be understanding of what that requires of other people in order to do that.
Amen.
How about you, Stuart? Do you have any advice?
Yeah, I think that tightrope balance is a very good piece of advice. It's a good analogy as well. Like, it's understanding that you know, those big ideas, they're glorious and grand in your mind, but sometimes they need to look differently when they come out of your mind, if that makes sense. There's, you know, treading that fine line between reality and magic, and that beautiful spot in between, that sweet spot, where you can create something that's magical, but within the constraints that you're presented with. And, you know, having creative-minded problem solvers on your team can definitely help that happen. A great example is one of the sort of group engagement activities we had at Fairbridge one year was one of the artists involved just commissioned a whole bunch of PVC pipes to be painted different colours, and they were all different lengths, and depending on what length they were a certain colour, and everyone got one of these handed out at the start of the festival, and they were essentially little panpipes. And when a colour flashed up on the screen, you had to blow your colour whistle, and there was a huge, you know, couple of thousand people playing this song together that they'd never heard. They didn't know how to play music, but they were all taking part in it. And it's that sort of an idea that's intrinsically simple and cheap, but deceptively complex to pull off at the same time. So it's those little elements that all come together to make a great idea to really work, but you have to have the right people behind you to pull it off.
Well, yeah, no, totally right. I'm definitely lucky with the team that I have in Propel Youth Arts. It's really, really been lovely so far. Amber, how about you?
I echo both Ian and Stuart around finding, but also supporting your team around you to help you deliver the best thing that you can. You know, I think collaboration is key in most applications of approaching any kind of project, particularly festivals. And I think looking to your peers and your industry and your sector to see what's there that you can support in turn as of them supporting you through collaboration, I think is really, really important. And the other thing that I, you know, even on those really hard days where the operations are incredibly hard and scary, and, you know, you've kind of hit a brick wall and all of those things, is that festivals exist for, and there may be festivals out there that don't exist for this, but on the majority, festivals exist as a way for people to experience enjoyment and delight and access things that make them happy and bring joy. And I think, you know, it won't always be not challenging, but, you know, and for yourself working in festivals, making sure you enjoy it and that you're doing it for people to enjoy it is something that's really kind of driven me in through those difficult times, and helping, you know, things have a longevity of, you know, making sure that it exists there for a reason, and a positive reason.
Yeah, exactly. Well said. Thank you, Amber. Jenny, do you?
Yeah. Look, once I also agree with everybody, and for me, it also comes back to team. We have a small team. I try and involve our little team in what I would call the language of programming. We have discussions within the team about what we think might work, what might not work, and we often do field trips to shows. So it's like, if there's a really good show on for children that I think we could have a great discussion about, you know, I'll buy us all tickets and we'll do a field trip out of the office and go see a show and then have discussions about it. Because I just don't see, once again, I've seen a lot of shows, and I know what good work looks like, but that's not the only part of the conversation. It's like, what is this show going to be for our community? What's the audience experience? How's it going to work, you know, in the context of being in Perth? And so yeah, I really share a lot of information with the team, and we're very collaborative. You know, laugh together, cry together, celebrate together, the whole gamut of emotions. And I think that's, and similarly across the board, you know, I'm just as likely to be problem solving something about the site or something as well, you know, so I get involved in all areas of the festival too. So we're being small, we're really a team of, I think, 4 people that deliver the festival. So we have to really work together well. So for a first-time festival director, yeah, surround yourself with good people who you can be completely honest with whom you can be vulnerable and say, I don't know if I'm getting this right. You know, certainly my team have probably got many examples of when I've got it wrong and they've saved my bacon, probably, I'd say. So, you know, we have to be honest with each other and back each other. Yeah. I
think that trust is really important as well. If you've got someone on your team and you don't put your trust in them and you're micromanaging, then why are they on your team? Do you know what I mean? If you've appointed someone on your team, you should delegate that authority and trust unto them and support them in any way you can. But yeah, if you're going to start a festival and you want to do everything, it's not going to last.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Amazing. Very, very extensive. Awesome. So we were slated to supposedly go till about 5:30. Although I am receiving a lot of Q&As and questions through the chat box as well as the Facebook page. And yeah, forgive me for those watching who we might not be able to get to your question in time. Although I'm wondering, is everybody okay if we go just a little bit over 5:30 just to be on the safe side? That'd be much appreciated. So we have a couple of questions that kind of continue along the advice for the Norwell Festival planner. We have received a question from Amber Kitney. What is the best way to reach out for internships? Yeah.
Reach out.
Phone, email, fine.
All right.
I think the key thing for me, if somebody wants to come and do an internship, I really need to have a clear picture of what they need and what's in it for them. I take them seriously. So if somebody's coming as an intern, I don't want them emptying the bins and doing data entry. I'd like it to be a bigger conversation about what are their aspirations and how we might best help and support them, and to have a really honest conversation about that, because if we're not the right vehicle for supporting them in an internship, then maybe I can suggest another organisation where it will be more beneficial to them.
Yeah. I think that's really important. I mean, the intern opportunities, then there's not a lot of them here in a formal sense. You know, it's you know, and I think if we can't offer a lot of intern opportunities because we want that experience to be valuable and for people to actually take away some meaningful skills. And I think you know, our ability to kind of say no to some of that. And, you know, we love to see people come and work for the festival through box office and front of house, and that's a really great way to kind of become familiar with the festival. But yeah, those opportunities should be taken really seriously from anyone who's kind of bringing you in as an intern.
Can I just quickly jump in, because there's a question that sort of relates to that, and the person has actually asked the question not just on Zoom but also on Facebook Live, so they must really want to answer it. This is from Sterling Kane, and they were wondering how your different organisations go about managing volunteers versus paid employees, and I suppose that would include interns as well. And I think what they're referring to is in terms of expectations, which Jenny has laid out. But yeah, are there any other differences in how you tailor those experiences and how you manage volunteers versus staff?
I'm very clear about that. For Awesome, if you are volunteering, you're volunteering in a role in which you don't have the qualifications. So if you are qualified, you should be in a paid role. And I don't have a paid role to offer you, we won't. But I'm not interested in getting free labour from qualified people. That's where we draw the line. And you know, if you want to volunteer and it's something you'd like to learn, or there's something in it for you, that is great. It's the same with internships. We don't go out there asking for interns to come to us, because we're not looking for free labour or slaves. You know, an internship is about, you know, supporting you in your learning and your education and your aspirations. Volunteer is what it is. You are volunteering, but you're not volunteering as a professional. If you're a professional, you're a professional and you get paid.
And the act of participating in it and the act of belonging intrinsic inside volunteer work is the nub of it. So certainly inside the festival, we treat our volunteers with as much joy and appreciation festival stands for, and I love hanging out as much as I possibly can with the volunteers who come, but you know, like trying to put someone every 20 meters down a highway requires quite a lot of people, but they get to see it like lots of other people too.
Fair enough. Awesome. I might go straight into another question just to make the most of this session. This question comes from Lauren Resnick. If you were hiring your successor, what would you look for?
Very good question.
Yeah, great question.
Right.
I'd say not me.
Yeah.
I think that, you know, every one of us takes our event on a journey, and then the next leg of the journey is something different. So I'd say somebody who is not me.
I'm someone that can bring, you know, a sense of sincerity and integrity to the organisation and the festival, but also a very fresh perspective. You know, I think, you know, a lot of long-standing people in positions, you know, I think we're very giving to our positions, but if you were to think of it as a sliding doors moment, if someone else was doing this, how would it look and where would it go and what could it be? And I think that's a very interesting and exciting thing, and I'd hope that they bring something fresh but with the same kind of integrity and love and care and respect would be all I could hope for. Yeah.
I think it might perhaps depend on context, where if the organisation is in sound financial place, as I had the joy of inheriting the festival in a sound financial place, that made me able to dream expansively and be an inexperienced festival director from this position, and yet if the times were tough, then you would want a slightly more strategic head in these instances. But my hope is that you would always have someone who has courage to forge their own path. That's I guess.
Yeah, I think it's an important point to make, Ian, is that every case is different, but I think empirically you want someone who has that balanced left and right brain, someone who can handle logistics and operations, but also has the ability to think outside the box in a creative way and get the best out of people. Someone who understands how to interact with people and has an empathy driving everything they do. I think that's important in arts organisations, especially dealing with volunteers. You need to understand what drives people, because the dollar definitely isn't it. You need to remunerate people in other ways that nurture them in the ways that they want to be nurtured.
Totally right. Yeah, I'm very aware of like the people who will be in my place after me, and wanting them to do what I can to make it a very like a fulfilling time, even when I might not be there. And yeah, and I'm really hoping that this this panel will be very beneficial to all the people who are after me. And I would like to maybe finish up with one more question, unless Jamie has a question that you want to bring in that stands out to you.
Well, I mean, we advertise this until 6, and I think, I don't know, we don't want to take up too many people's time during the witching hour with kids or anything like that. But I think we have, from what I can see, we have maybe 6 questions. So maybe if we don't take any further questions, would that be okay with everyone? And we could do like some rapid fire or something like that.
All good. I've got a board meeting at 6, but apart from that, I'm all yours.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Barrel through.
All right, let's chug on through it. And maybe, yeah, if that's the case, I might chuck in a question of my own that like has just kind of come to mind, especially with sponsors that have already come out, from Amber and Jenny in particular. And that was something that I've experienced myself in working with the model that we have for KickstART, where we have a different creative coordinator each year. So there's a new young person in that role each year. Kobe is the person this year, and Kobe's managed to program 2 festivals in this span of a month. So he's, you know, he's obviously a bit of a keeper. But because of the way that role is structured, and it's structured that way to, you know, ideally give this kind of opportunity to as many young people in WA as possible, I was wondering how each of you have managed to kind of cope with, from a mental health point of view, with this kind of the festival roller coaster, you know, this very slow slide up and then a very quick, oh, what just happened? The festival just happened, and everything I've been working towards is now over for the next year. How do you navigate that in your own lives? And especially, I think, from that mental health point of view, because that's something that we've been trying to buffer within Propel for quite some time. And it's something, it's a very tricky thing to get the balance of.
Yeah, I mean, we lovingly coin it the post-festival blues. You know, it's a pretty, you know, so much time and energy goes into the physical setup, but not only that, it's, you know, 11 months of thinking and planning and ideas, and then timelining and communications and all of those different things. It really is a full cycle, let alone for anything you're planning for beyond that. You know, I think in the festival realm, one of the things we ask our team when we're building our team is like, what measures, what do you do to kind of take care of yourself in a fast-paced environment? Like, do you prioritize your own well-being over partying or networking or staying out late? And, you know, that's also really important. But, you know, acknowledging that it's a marathon, not a sprint, I think is one of the first places to start. And, you know, that can really determine how far you can make it, if you know, not in the artist club until 3 a.m. on the first night. But from an organisational perspective, you know, we meet so many great young producers and young presenters and coordinators that come and work with the festival. And, you know, unfortunately, we're not built to be able to keep all of those wonderful people year round. So, you know, we keep people on as long as our organisation is able to, you know, extending contracts where we can. And but in those periods after the festival, capturing people's ideas, making sure that they've had a chance to kind of debrief as much as they can, but also contribute to future planning, you know, timelines, ideas, structures, and, you know, doing as much work for the next round as possible, I think helps buffer the gap of when someone you know is going to return to you and has to leave and then come back and do, you know, heaps of cool stuff in between, but ultimately they're kind of not at the desk for 6 months. So you know, I think giving yourself the time, but also your team the time to kind of be part of the longer game is certainly how I approach that.
I've got a methodology about debriefing, I think, that helps us in dealing with it. When I was at the National Folk Festival, we had 46 different teams, and they were mostly volunteers, and with varying levels of investment. And you always get tensions happening in that environment. So what I quickly learned was the best process for me was to debrief individually but plan together. So I would speak to each person individually and say, right, what went wrong, what went right? The first thing I say is, you know, should we put a big line through the way we're doing things and start again, or is it a tweaker? Do we tweak it? Very rarely do I have people say put a big line through it. Go through all the issues and then say, so what are your ideas? And then when people get into that creative, well, I thought if we did this and we did that, that's when the gold comes through and people actually start to feel very, you know, I think, oh, well, I'm talking about the future now. And because I've just been involved in this great event, I now am able to have a good opinion about the future and my ideas are being heard. So then I get everybody together and say, right, here's the problems that were listed, and here's some of the things that we need to talk about, how we fix them. And here are the big ideas, and watch everybody stand a lot taller when they realise that what they've just been through is going to help shape the next event and make it better. And I can guarantee you that most of the good ideas that have happened at the Awesome Festival have come from the team or the cohort that we've debriefed with that's around the festival. My job is to harness them, put them together, make them make sense, and tee it all up with the artist's ideas. So I debrief individually but plan together is my motto in helping us all cope. Apart from get some sleep and you know, go back to your family, start eating good food. I have the advantage of running a festival that packs down by 4 p.m. every day, so which really suits, you know, me getting a little bit older and wanting that sleep. So I let the young ones party and I go home and I'm awake the next day, functioning somehow.
I mean, for us, there are people the performing arts are filled with artists who are used to that compression and expansion, the compression and pressure of getting onto stage and being on stage, and the expansion, the relaxation afterwards. We deal with it similarly. We have psychologists looking after mental health on the way into a festival and trying to manage workloads. We try and resource accordingly so that people can nominate themselves into a place of feeling stress, and it's all through bucket analogies, and my bucket's full and I just need some. But that's acknowledging that almost every single person who works inside the organisation goes above and beyond. And that's part of life inside the performing arts, and how you find a balance between going above and beyond and then going the beyond is unhelpful and inappropriate for an employer to ask. And it's all of that care, and having open channels of communication and having glorious people to work with certainly helps, but try and resource them and buttress them into the best of our abilities, and debrief for weeks afterwards. But the only thing that I would say about debriefs is that it's intrinsic, that it's incumbent on us to enact the lessons or don't engage with the debrief process, because there's nothing worse than saying the same freaking thing year in, year out, and it never changes. So acknowledge the things that won't be able to change quite early on.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. That makes a lot of sense. Stuart, did you have anything to
I think one thing that resonated with me is those lines of communication and just providing the avenues of communication, but also just the awareness that they exist is really important, because one of the first things I like to do when I come into a new organisation is just let people know that honesty and transparency and accessibility are just their foremost, because communication in any relationship within your life, be it business or personal, communication is absolutely key. And if you don't feel able to communicate freely and openly and honestly, then it's going to rot away inside. So just having that awareness at an organisational level that you should, can, and will communicate freely on a regular basis. It's a really comforting thing for everyone in the organisation to know that. And some of the organisations I've been involved with, there hasn't been that culture of openness. It's been a lot of closed door meetings and a lot of this is above your pay grade kind of conversations going on. Whereas I think a lot of the time what you don't say to people is worse than what you can say to people, because people make up their own dialogue in their head as to what might be going on, and that's oftentimes a lot worse than what might be going on. So yeah, I think that transparency from the top down is really important. Obviously, you're not going to tell them everything and anything, the stuff that they don't need to know, but you tell them this is something you actually don't need to know. You don't tell them nothing. You know what I mean? People need to feel comfortable and secure across all levels of the organisation.
Thanks, Stuart. Appreciate it. All right. Let's. So I have a question here. It's one of the more hard-hitting questions from Patrick Gansakera. This one's just in general. Patrick asks, how are you phasing out fossil fuels funding arts? This is just a question for everybody.
I was expecting a lot worse, the way you led into it.
Sorry. Yeah.
Look, I think this is a really important conversation for our sector to have, and our community to have on a wider level. You know, and I think this is perhaps the last 6 to 12 months has just been the beginning of a longer term conversation. You know, and while each organisation will have its own response to how that phase out might happen or what the future looks like, I think you know, here and now, that those partnerships have been really important to get us to this point of where we are today. And I think that this will be something that, you know, our community and organisations are going to have to respond to, not only now but also in the longer term.
Yeah. That's understandable.
We're the recipient of funding from a wide range of sources at the festival, including, on the public record, Chevron, and we are continuing to utilise that money in ways that hopefully is celebrated by many people in terms of the way that money exists. It's a long and complicated question about how best divestment can occur, what the power of what we can do with that money that comes from fossil fuels. And I know that the Fringe World are in a similar situation. Every arts company in this state specifically are in that same position. But the amount of things we've managed to do with money from all of our sources, including the state government and petrochemical companies, is for the greater good of the community, and that's where we like to keep our focus.
Very well said. No, thanks. Thank you so much for yeah, commenting on that. Yes, we have about 4 more questions. I have a question here from one of our anonymous attendees. Do you have any examples of any ideas or projects that you thought would be totally amazing, but may have flopped in the end?
Eskimo Joe, maybe?
Well.
Oh, brutal.
You say this, but...
I had that kind of flop on my hands.
Not a flop to me. It's major inspiring.
No, it's just self-deprecating humour. No, look, I think everyone's... I guess that's that conversation again. It's bringing those ideas from your brain out. I mean, everyone can speak German in their dreams, but the actual reality is you can't, you know? So it's translating what's in your brain to reality that sometimes you just don't quite get it right. But you can't, you know, you can't dwell on those too much.
Yeah. Wow.
And they're all learning processes, you know. If everything you ever did was amazing, then I don't think you'd find that next thing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm totally right.
I mean, in the context of that, like when with my composer hat on, every time someone asks you what's the favorite piece of music that you've ever composed, the answer is always the next one. There's a discrepancy between what you have in your mind and what ends up manifesting, and either you've given freedom to that piece of art and it's taken on its own life and it's not quite what you wanted, and sometimes exerting control over something makes it worse. But I've certainly been involved in some seriously bad pieces of theatre in my life, and I'm not going to mention them in this forum.
I enjoy that, you know, from a fringe perspective, you know, for me, the ultimate fringe journey is where you see things that you love and see things that you hate, you know, and I think that as a consumer is a really important thing that I've learned, and that I know a lot of other people have learned, that it's okay to not like things because it only makes you enjoy the things you love even more. And in a fringe context, you know, it's an hour of your life. You've probably watched worse television and infomercials at some point, and you know, at the end of the day, it's still very affordable. But I do think that is an important part of being engaged in arts and culture and seeing theatre, is that as much as you want to see everything that you love, you have to be able to see some stuff that you don't enjoy as well, and to be able to know why you don't enjoy it, I think is the other big lesson there.
Yeah.
I do enjoy the unpicking after the fact as well. Just sort of, you know, you've put on an event and it hasn't gone as you had expected or hoped, and it's like knitting a jumper and you fucked up one bit and you've got to unpick it all to find out why it all went wrong. And I quite enjoy that analysis, and I don't know, that introspection and understanding, you know, what motivates people to come to shows, and that ultimately just makes you better at your job, I think, and better at your craft.
Yeah, I agree. I think what you learn is important. I programmed a beauty a couple of years ago. I saw this show. It was great. It was a really good show. They did a complete rewrite before the festival, and it was a show for 3 and up, and they popped in a death scene that was inappropriate for children that age. So I went to this show and sat there in abject horror thinking, this is not the show I programmed. Oh my God, there are 3-year-olds here, you know, and all the while trying to put on my festival director's smile, like, isn't it great? Thinking, God. You know, and as I was leaving the theatre, the phone rang. It was a reviewer saying, that sucked, just letting you know, so you're warned, you're going to get a bad review for that show. It's like, yeah, go ahead, make my day. I had to, you just live with it. It's cut and thrust. It's what you do. Okay. They didn't tell me they rewrote the show and they changed the script and everything before it came in. So I had a fairly robust conversation with the artists after their season. It wasn't appropriate to go and crash tackle them when they're trying to perform a show at your festival. Said, look, just a word of advice. You know, the show that I programmed wasn't the show that you presented, and So let's have a chat about how you communicate with festival directors, because I don't want anyone else to be in this situation, because I actually had recommended the festival and was doing a tour somewhere else. So, so the show, is potentially going to cause some disappointment elsewhere. And they were fairly defensive and so forth, but I was able to sort of say, it's just about communication. If the show has concepts that aren't appropriate for 3-year-olds, you need to communicate that to the people programming it. And then, in our debrief, everybody was like, oh, geez, Jen, that was a shocker. How'd we go there? And I said, well, this is what happened. Nobody beat themselves up about it. It does happen. And for me, I check in a bit more with artists when they're bringing shows in, particularly artists I don't know very well. I didn't know this company very well. So I feel that it's probably a lesson for me is to build up a bit more of a rapport with those artists and for them to get an understanding of, the context of the festival. And it was for young children and so forth. So I learned quite a bit from that experience. And I guess that's, didn't beat myself up too much. It happened. We're all dreading it when the reviewer rings you as you're leaving the theatre, eh?
Yeah.
Thank you, Davidson. Patty, if you're listening.
I knew it was him.
I've heard a lot about this fella. Don't know what he says. All right, got that to look forward to. All right, so I am wanting to read out a question from Azariah. I think that's how I'll say it. Azariah Felton, who says, "Hi everyone. Do you have any thoughts on how to balance the theme or festival style against bringing a wide range of diverse acts and having a lot of variety in programming? Do themes or concepts for a festival play a big role in programming?"
I mean, I run a theme for each festival, and those are laid out across my cycle, and they're these moments of starting close to home, Kala, the hearth and the place of belonging for Noongar people, and then out to Bilia, the river in 2021, and out to Warrada and the ocean in 2022, and Jinda, the stars in 2023. So ever expanding moments, but those themes are hopefully broad enough that there are a multitude of responses to them, but specific enough that it gives you a starting point or a leaping point or a point for response. So for me, a theme is only good if it gives you, so each of those are tied to geographical or real things, and specifically the river and the ocean as well in this coming year and the following year. And so hopefully in having a response to a specific place, but it also gives it might be an emotional response or a very tangential response to that. So not to be prescriptive is if you're going to set a theme.
I don't program to a theme because I feel that a theme can potentially imprison you or it could set you free. Depends how prescriptive it is. So if in the program as it's emerging, a theme comes through and it's really strong, then I might look to expand upon that theme and strengthen it. But yeah, I tend not to start with a theme and say, I'm going to create a festival around that. I love Iain's approach. It's very strategic and it is broad enough to be, to give you the freedom to program. But yeah, tend not to have a theme before I go into a festival. Sometimes I've had people come to me after the festival and say, oh, so like you mentioned, the theme of our festival was superheroes, and that was that did become a theme, and I was good with that. But I've often had people come to me after the festival and say, oh, that deconstructionist blah 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 theme that you had, oh, that was simply brilliant. And I've just tried to own it, knowing full well that it was completely accidental. So yeah, I don't really program the theme.
Yeah. I can totally see the advantages that can be brought about when utilizing the themes within a festival, and whether the person decides to operate by a theme. It does, if you have a lot of ideas, then it's good to be able to bring some of those ideas back to focus on the theme, and then you have apply some others to the next iteration. Or for the KickstART festival that we were going to have earlier in the year, the theme that I was going for was going to be, what the theme was Kura Mila Ye, which means past, future, present in Nyunga. And it was to be a theme that was like very broad, and so I was able to take on everybody anyway. And so, yeah, because I was like very hesitant that I didn't want to be like, you know, leaving anyone behind as a result of the theme, or like making things like all too much or not understandable in a sense. Anyway, so we have a question from Ava Hart, which is, if you have an idea, you present it to your. If you have an idea, you present to your team that you work collaboratively with, but they don't believe in it or back you on it. Believing in it, back you on it. How do you make it work or try to implement it as leaders of the team?
Dock the wages. Oh
man, that winded me.
I had an idea last year for my team, and that was to run a gala opening for the festival. We'd never done it before. And my team very honestly came to me and said, Jenny, there's like 4 of us and we're trying to get an international festival up and running. And now you want to have a bloody gala with the governor and the premier, and you want to pre-film all these things. Nice idea, but no, right? They just said no. So I said to them, what if I just do it on my own and you help me on the day? So they agreed to that. I foolishly agreed to that. So I basically devised that whole event. I scripted the whole thing. I went out and organised all the pre-filming and everything that had to be done. And they, a delightful team, basically came in as the arms and legs on the day and you know, delivered it. So I guess that was a negotiation where they just said, we don't have the capacity. Nice idea, but what are you going to drop so that we can do this? And like we couldn't. We had a festival. I couldn't drop the festival in favour of a gala. So yeah, I think it's you have to be sensible. And if they had said to me, or if I didn't think that I could deliver that myself, I would have not done it. I just would have walked away and thought, no. It's better to know you can do it well, or if you can't do it well, walk away and don't under-deliver it.
Yeah, I think again, it's about that expectation and about the trust as well in the people that you're working with and the team that you've put together. They should be able to trust your vision, but you should also be able to trust their expertise as well. I think it definitely goes both ways.
And sometimes it can just be about being articulate. You haven't articulated the idea well, and sometimes through the pushback, the idea takes on a far more distilled and therefore successful. So I always encourage, and everyone in the team encourages it. It's that theatrical collaborative medium. Everyone has a voice, and from those voices, it doesn't become a camel. It becomes a distilled thing, as long as you're sure about what you're aiming for, and that's the role. And the second part of that question, some people like to be told what to do. My instinct is always to open up the floor, but then sometimes people, given that freedom, get nervous inside that context. And so it's about knowing the psychology of the other person and how they like to be treated most respectfully and therefore most usefully.
And that, as a leader, all ideas, if you're opening a discussion with your team to throw ideas up, that, you know, everything is valid, you know, and I think some of our best ideas have come from someone going like, oh, wouldn't it be crazy? And it's like, actually, that's genius, you know, like that's actually going to save the day. So as leaders, you know, allowing for those kinds of conversations and trust, and but also listening to your gut, and, you know, if you really believe in something, talking it through with your team and responding to their criticism or feedback, or, you know, kind of holes that they're picking in it, is probably a really good and robust exercise to have to do in order to, yeah, kick the can around and make sure that, you know, you're kind of thinking in the right direction.
Mm-hmm.
I agree.
I'm really sorry, everyone. I have to actually get to a Zoom board meeting.
No worries.
Thanks, Stuart. Pleasure.
Absolute pleasure speaking with you all. And everyone
Likewise.
listening, I hope you've got something interesting out of this.
Thank you.
See you at
Bye,
Fairbridge.
Stu.
Thank you, Stuart.
Bye.
Appreciated.
See you next April.
Good job. Well done. All right. Yeah, so
How about that Stu guy? Like, really?
You're probably still watching.
Yeah.
All right, so yeah, definitely wary of time. So we might finish up with one more question, and we'll take this question from Darcy. Darcy has asked, what lessons do you wish you have learned earlier in your arts careers, and how would you translate those lessons into advice for young people listening?
Get comfortable with feedback. You know, I think it may not always be what you want to hear, or come in a way that feels good or anything like that. But I do think, you know, listening to people around you about how they see your work and how they see you delivering that, I think can always be really insightful. And, you know, whilst perhaps the natural trigger is to move to defensive, I think, you know, everyone who's around you has your best interests at heart. And, you know, harnessing that feedback to improve and create something positive is one of the best things you could learn to do.
I mean, from my own practice, sometimes you spend a lot of time worrying about something that's very small. And so I'm not sure how best to worry less about some of those things, but some of that is about trusting other people's feedback. So do accept a compliment simply as a compliment, and that was good, and don't necessarily think that that was only given to G you up. Those things are genuine, and you can accept them and then proceed to the next thing.
Yeah.
Gosh, you've both answered that so beautifully. Heavens, I'm lost for words for once in my whole life. No, look, I agree with both of you. I think being able to accept feedback and have honest conversations. Probably I would say don't get too hung up on your mistakes. Mistakes are just an opportunity to learn. So, and don't string other people up for their mistakes either, because it's their opportunity to learn. So, you know, quit this thinking that you've got all the answers and they're an idiot and blame them. You shouldn't be blaming people. You should be having conversations and you know, allowing for everybody to be human and make mistakes, because it's out of the mistakes sometimes that the best things can happen.
Indeed.
Thank you so much, everyone. It's been really, really inspiring to be able to talk to all of you. I really appreciate you guys taking the time out to take part in this panel. I know that I'm definitely not the only person who's been inspired from this panel, and I hope that I'm able to see you all in person at maybe another panel session next year at the next KickstART, if you wanted to do that.
Yeah,
if you're free, just check your calendars now, and yeah, we'll see how it goes. Yeah, Jamie, did you want to say anything before we finish up our session for tonight?
No, I just wanted to echo Kobe's sentiments. Thank you, Amber. Thank you, Jenny, and thank you, Ian. And I guess thank you, Stu, even though you left early. We really appreciate having your insight and contributions. And I know there's a lot of great feedback coming through on the live streams as well. So it's been really wonderful. And also thank you, Kobe, for doing such a fantastic job of facilitating the conversation and getting everyone together in the same virtual Zoom room. Thanks, Kobe.
Hey, can I just say well done to you for the way you have brought this festival together in these extraordinary circumstances. I've loved watching everything roll out on social media, and it's I think I could say it's good for our souls to know that this festival has continued, and Propel Youth Arts plays a really important role. You know, you are all these brilliant young artists, you know, you're coming through, and they're coming through and having great experiences with Propel Youth Arts. And I just love the energy and what you're doing. So congratulations and thanks.
Yeah, thanks for allowing this discussion with some amazing colleagues. Doesn't happen very often. It's great.
No, it doesn't, and it's really pleasurable, and you're impossible to say no to. So thanks, Kobe, and thanks, Jamie.
Thank you so much.
Thank you guys, and yeah, we should do this more often. Definitely.
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah, I would just like to tell you guys that these are some of the people that I have worked with in my time at Propel, especially these kids, these young kids as young as like 12 and 13 are just extremely inspiring, and like these are the next leaders, and I can safely say without a doubt that like for the next generations we're in good hands. And yeah, and it's I think a lot of it has to do with, you know, all the inspiration that's generated from yourselves and the festivals that you hold. And yeah, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
And can I say thanks for all the great questions?
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, these people thought of
Let's
everything.
eat the people. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Cheers.
Yes, I will. Yeah, I hope you guys have a wonderful evening. Thanks again for your time, and I hope everybody who's been watching has enjoyed this and has a wonderful night and a wonderful rest of their KickstART virtual. And yeah, I will see you all later.
Order one.
Order one. Order Jinang, everybody.
Everyone do that wave thing now.
All right, bye.